All right. Well, thank you, John Ruddick, for joining us. And you're running as a candidate for the New South Wales Senate in the upcoming election. Please tell us who you're representing and why you've sort of got yourself involved.
Okay, Rob. Well, look, good to see you. I think we went to school many, many years ago, but
We did.
out in Tamworth. Now, I had been involved in the New South Wales Liberal Party for 30 years. And I was sort of involved in the internal politics, trying to bring about democratic reform. Now, then we have this, and I have been disappointed for almost my entire time in the Liberal Party with the calibre of the politicians that party was putting into Parliament. And the New South Wales Liberal Party, Rob, has basically had every leader of the Liberal Party since the 1980s, with one brief exception, Alexander Downer. So the New South Wales Liberal Party is a pretty important organisation. Morrison, Abbott, Turnbull, Howard, Brendan Nelson, all these people were leaders of the Liberal Party. They're all from the New South Wales Liberal Party, rightly or wrongly. Now, what we need in politics is people. The democratic ideal is that somebody's going to have gone out there, had a successful career in something not to do with politics. And then when they are sort of, they've got a bit of grey hair about themselves, they're wise. I know kids get to the age of 20, read 3 books and think that they're geniuses on every subject and then go and vote Greens. But, the wiser people are people who sort of, have had a few knocks in life, met a few good people, met a few bad people, been around the block. We want these people to be making decisions, because politics, Rob, is about the next generation. It's about thinking ahead. What wise decisions can we make today to keep future generations protected? Okay, so here we go, after a year and a half of COVID madness, and I am not a COVID denier, I am a COVID realist. I know two people quite close to me who briefly had to spend time in hospital, so I'm not downplaying COVID, but I absolutely am saying it's been over-exaggerated about 20 times more than it was. We get a bad flu every year all around the world. It's been happening since we were living in the caves. We get a bad flu every year. And sometimes we get a flu every year. Sometimes it's a moderate one. Sometimes it's a little bit worse than usual. And about once every quarter of a century, it's really bad. COVID's one of these, particularly bad. Okay, but it's not worth blowing up civilization for now. And that is what we did for a couple of years. So what we did is the Liberal Party, which I was trying to reform, gave us $1 trillion in debt because of COVID, gave us the COVID police state, and all these, locking people up and mandatory vaccines. And then they've completely capitulated on the global warming fairy tale. And so I just thought, look, what is the point of hanging around in the Liberal Party? So I had been voting for the Liberal Democrats for many years. The Liberal Democrats are a libertarian party, which means that we believe in small government. And the party's been around for about 22 years. We believe in just letting business flourish. We believe in letting individuals flourish, and we believe in having a small state. And that is, so the message of the Liberal Democrats is particularly relevant today in the age of COVID hysteria, climate hysteria, and debt to Jupiter.
Yeah, well, just for full disclosure, John, I joined the Liberal Democrats myself during the COVID fiasco. I reiterate all those points that you made. I'm a big advocate of smaller government. Government actually decreases productivity and it adversely impacts the quality of our life, not the opposite, which I think's a bit of Australia's got an issue with. A lot of people think the opposite, and I don't know how they come to that conclusion, but nonetheless. Yes. Well, thanks for joining me today. As you know, I'm in the financial services space, and look, we've had issues with the current Liberal government for some time about the regulations that they brought into our space, and indeed, I think over-regulation, which has caused the accessibility for affordable financial advice for mum and dads to become a very big issue in this country.
Yes.
We've seen a lot of people at the back end of their career being forced from the industry, and all of these things, they're just not principles that I feel are Australian. and I'm not alone. So with this upcoming election, one of the associations, the AOFP, which is run by Peter Johnston, has actually been very out there in his criticism of the Liberals, and it's caused a lot of internal discussions about, if we don't vote for the Liberals, we're going to have to vote for the Labor, and they're going to be worse.
Yeah.
Now, personally, I don't think that that's true, and I also think that it's a bit of a misconception in Australia that, it's either one or the other, but there's no in between. And so what I'd like us to go through today is how that is a fallacy and how we can set the record straight on how we can get the minor parties engaged in the process, and people can actually show their support at the ballot box.
Okay, so I am in complete agreement. When I haven't been a political activist, I've been a mortgage broker for the last 20 years. And, when I became a mortgage broker, it was a laissez-faire industry. And, basically, it was a growth industry. It was a dynamic industry. And a lot of people built really successful businesses and helped consumers immensely. And that's why the mortgage broking industry grew. Now, then what has happened is, it's become regulated by people who've never been in business. The politicians said, well, look, we've got to do something. We've had the GST and the subprime crisis, and we've had the Banking Royal Commission. Well, look, we've just got to bring in all these rules. Now, I'll tell you what those rules are doing. They are strengthening and enriching the existing players, like myself, like yourself, probably, Robert.
Yeah.
It's difficult within a highly regulated industry for new, young, enthusiastic people with a lot of ability, talent, and drive. It's difficult for them to start a business these days. It's not impossible. Okay,
John, they've effectively created a closed shop.
Yes,
now, most Labor unions would have fallen over themselves to be that effective in that. And we've got a Liberal government that's created a closed shop.
Absolutely.
Ridiculous.
That's what, and so, good for me, okay, but I mean, a politician is meant, and good citizens are meant to be thinking about what's good for the wider world. And now, all those regulations, I've got a little mates who are financial planners, and all the stuff we've got to do with these mortgage brokers, it's basically all meaningless. It doesn't protect the consumers. It bogs down the loan approval application. I really believe, and hardly anybody ever takes advantage of these consumer protection things that are out there now. But all loans have to be heavily scrutinised, that they fall within these rules. What's happened now is we don't really have banks in this country. We have quasi-government institutions. The big banks and the regulators are setting all the rules about how the banks lend money. So it's all crap, and I know it's a lot worse for financial planners than it is for mortgage brokers, and it's bad for mortgage brokers. And I know that what's happening is it's resulting in probably millions of Australians, mum and dads who aren't focused on their finances, good people, but they're doing other things, being underinsured. And so that can't be a good thing, because they've made it so complicated and so heavily regulated, which is the complete opposite of what the Liberal Democrats want to do. Now, in Australia, to have a law, we have to get that law has to be approved by 50% plus one in the House of Representatives, and then still not a law. It then needs to get approved by 50% plus one in the Senate. Now, it is likely that after the next federal election, either the Labor Party or the Liberal National Party will have a majority in the House of Representatives. We're certainly going to be contesting it as hard as we can, and so are other freedom-friendly parties like Pauline Hanson and Clive Palmer's party, the United Australia Party. But the real action, it is rare for a government, for one political party, to control the House of Representatives and to control the Senate. It's very rare. Last time it happened in this country was John Howard between 2004 and 2007, had control of the House, had control of the Senate. Now,
so those individuals who control the Senate hold the balance of power.
Yes.
They are effectively, for the lack of a better word, they're kingmakers, they're deal makers. They're all powerful.
Well, they are all powerful in most cases. So at the moment, we've got the Scott Morrison, Liberal Party Prime Minister, Scott Morrison does not have a majority in the Senate. But there's the Greens, there's One Nation, there's Rex Patrick, there's Jackie Lambie, there's, I think, probably a couple of other minor party people. And now, if Labor and Liberal agree on the legislation, which they do quite often, then the crossbenchers got no say. But they're agreeing on things which are not controversial. It might be removing some little statute from the law from 1932 about growing pineapples in North Queensland. It's not going to be in the major newspaper, but it just needed to be cleaned up for whatever reason. But when it's contentious, which, you know, the things that make the newspaper are contentious and the federal budgets are contentious, then yes, the opposition will oppose the government's bill and the crossbench will basically say this is going to be approved or not. Now, this is what the Liberal Democrats are hoping at the next federal election to have, hopefully 6 senators at the next federal election, where we'll have a big say. And I can promise you, Rob, every single piece of bill we're going to be saying to the government, well, we'll support it if it cuts taxes, cuts regulation. And, you know, you don't even need to do any deals with us. When they're going to do deals with other parties, Jackie Lambie says, oh, okay, well, we'll support this bill, but you've got to spend $600 million on a hospital in northern Tasmania. Okay, well, there'll be none of that crap from the Liberal Democrats. There'll be you won't need to twist our arms. We'll be saying to whoever the government is, say, look, you wind back the state, wind back taxes, wind back regulation, and you'll have our support.
Yeah, okay, good. So just on that, I guess, you know, the question the thing that always pops up is when you're talking to Ma and Pa out there or Joe Blow out on the street, they go, oh, well, they're both as bad as each other. You know, it doesn't really matter which one you get. And to a larger extent, I sort of agree that the difference between the two major parties has never been smaller
Yes.
that I can remember. But I think the other thing is that our system of voting, the preferential voting system, actually gives the voters a lot of power to actually tell both of these parties that we're not happy with what you're doing, and we're going to preference our votes to other people. And should those other people not get across the line, you can still then go with the major party that, you know, you're sort of least afraid of, for the lack of a better term. And so the preferential voting system, I think, is a wonderful thing.
It's a very democratic thing, and it's also a very unusual thing because there's not many democracies in the world that have it. But Australians have had it since the 1920s. Now, what it means is, I'll explain how it sort of works abstractly, and then I'll sort of just drill down on a little example. But the bottom line is this: let's say you are cranky with the Liberal Party or the National Party. You think that they have moved too far to the left and they're not friendly enough towards business and free enterprise. But you really, really, really do not want to vote for the Labor Party because you think that they will be worse. And I know a lot of people in that category. I'm probably in that category. So, but what we do is you vote one for the Liberal Democrat candidate in the House of Representatives and in the Senate. And then you can put, well, we are recommending you then put to the United Australia Party, which is Clive Palmer and Craig Kelly's party. We haven't worked out our other preferences, but I imagine Paul Hanson's party will be towards the top as well. And there's some other freedom-friendly parties out there, okay? And so we want to put all of those first, but you can put them first, but then the most critical thing on your ballot paper is who out of the Liberal and Labor you put last, okay? Yeah. Now, some people think, oh, well, if I put the Liberal Democrats first, by the time it gets down to the Liberals and I vote for them ahead of Labor, maybe my vote has been diminished or diluted in some way. That is not true. No. Your vote's still worth 100%. So I'll give you a little example. Let's say there's a federal electorate. Let's call it the seat of Howard. There's no seat named after John Howard yet, but there will be in the next 20 years. So let's say there's the seat of Howard. There's let's say the Liberal candidate. Let's say the Liberal candidate gets 40% of the vote. Now, let's say the Labor candidate gets 40% of the vote. Let's say the Liberal candidate gets 31% of the vote. And let's say the Liberal Democrat candidate gets 19% of the vote. Okay. Now, in most democracies, including the United States and the United Kingdom, that Labor candidate who got 40% has won the election, even though 60% didn't vote for them. Okay. And this is why in the US, there is just two parties. There is the Democrat and there is the Republican Party. Okay. I mean, there are some other little parties who get absolutely no votes, way less than 1%. They've got a Green Party in America.
And they do dilute the vote.
It is a wasted vote.
Yes.
100% wasted vote. If you vote for the Libertarian Party in America or you vote for the Green Party in America, yeah, your vote's not going to be counted. Okay. But in Australia, going back to our seat of Howard, we've got Labor on 40, we've got the Liberal Party on 31, we've got the Liberal Democrat on 19. Now, let's say that you were one of the 19%. You wanted to send a message of encouragement for the Liberal Democrats. You hope that they would win, okay? And you want to also say, sending a message to the government, hey, I like these freedom parties more than I like you. Okay, but then the people that voted 19% for the Liberal Democrats, thank you very much, because they have come third and nobody has got over 50% of the vote, they're going to then get the ballot papers of those people, that 19% that voted for the Liberal Democrat, and they're going to say, okay, all these people that voted for the Liberal Democrat, who did they preference number two? They'll go through every single vote. Now, I would imagine in this case, 90% of people who vote for Liberal Democrats are going to say, okay, if the Liberal Democrats don't win, they don't get over 50%, I would like my vote then to go to the Liberal Party. Now, they might have gone United Australia Party or Paul and Hanson, but in this case, we've only got 3 votes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then 90% will go to the Liberal Party, and that means that we then have a situation where, there will be what's called the 2-party preferred result, whereas we eliminate who's come last, and then we see whether Labor or Liberal will get over 50%. So voting for the Liberal Democrats in the Senate or in the House of Representatives does 2 very good things. Firstly, it sends a message of encouragement and identification with Australia's best political party. And sorry, that's what we are. We're what the Liberal Party used to stand for in the 1980s, what Margaret Thatcher used to stand for, what Ronald Reagan used to stand for, which is small government and big citizens. So by voting for us, you're encouraging us, and hopefully our vote will grow and grow at every election. But you're also not wasting your vote, because you might say, I really don't want a Labor government. I'm going to put Labor last. Maybe you want to put the Greens last. Put Labor second last, put the Liberals third last. Your vote's going to be a vote for the Liberal Party.
Yeah, shouldn't get that far.
Yes.
So with the two houses, there's the upper house and the lower house. So the lower house is the House of Representatives, where government's effectively formed.
Yes.
The ballot paper it's just one lot, and it's just, if there's 12 candidates, it's just 1 to 12, yeah, in the order that you want to pick.
Correct.
What about the Senate? What about the upper house? Because that's a bit of a different kettle of fish.
Okay, so in the Senate, they have changed the rules. So House of Representatives is a little green piece of paper, and you're right, there'll be typically in most states 12 candidates. There'll be Liberal, Labor, United Australia Party, Liberal Democrats. You've got to, in a federal election, you've got to number all 12 boxes, or your vote's invalid. So you can go in there and vote one Liberal Democrat and nothing else, your vote's going to get chucked out. So that's a wasted vote. Okay, so just be careful, number all the boxes for the federal election. State election, it's called optional preferential. You don't have to preference. Now in the Senate is the one where traditionally you get this big, long ballot paper with, typically 40 political party names on it. Okay, now I think because Liberal and Labor did collude last year in changing the electoral rules to something fairly fundamental way, I suspect there's only going to be 10 to 12 parties at the next federal election. So you'll still have a fairly wide white ballot paper. Now, you need to number 6 boxes. I think it's best to number the boxes above the line. If you really care about an individual in particular, you can go below the line and tick 6 boxes for individuals, not for a political party. Now, but I think it's best to go above the line, vote 1 Liberal Democrat, vote 2 United Australia Party, probably Pauline will be up there. Now, the Liberal Democrats are currently in a position of negotiating with Liberal and Labor about where our preferences will go and where their preferences will go. And, so we will probably have one of those major parties in the top rung. but that's far from decided at this stage. But we need to tick 6 above the line for the Senate.
So if people do their homework, they can actually go to this election, their vote will count, and they can send messages, even though they may not necessarily get the result that they're after, but they can definitely send a message because particularly, well, all the major parties, the primary vote's key for them. If they're not getting the primary vote, i.e. the people saying they're number one, they're going to struggle to make government. And I think that's probably Morrison's issue at the moment. He's increased to 35. I think that figure needs to be more like a 40, doesn't it?
3 years ago this week, I wrote an article for The Spectator in which I said, look, I reckon Morrison's going to win this election. And I'm not a fan of Scott Morrison, and I wasn't 3 years ago. Okay, but and this is when all the geniuses are saying shortened one. And all my analysis was based on, look, the incumbent Prime Minister is usually behind in the polls. Okay, now, but in the lead up to an election, that gap narrows, and very often they sort of just squeak over the line. Okay, John Howard was often behind, Bob Hawke was often behind, but they would squeak over. But there is an indicator which tells us when a government will actually lose, and that is if they're 3 months before an election and they're seriously behind, which is the situation right now. So 3 years ago, all the experts are saying shortens one. I was saying, look, Morrison's going into this campaign. It's like the polls were typically 47-53 in Shorten's favour. I said, that's not enough. When people get closer and closer, and that's exactly what happened. Morrison won. Now the gap is about sort of 12 points. Consistently, there's been about 4 polls this year, 3 news polls, at least 1 essential poll, consistently showing a big gap. Now you can't pick up that big gap, except of course we have this situation in Ukraine, and that's going to sort of freak some people out, rightly or wrongly. And you know that's a big factor in the election. It certainly is. The election was held this Saturday.
Yeah, well, we've had a discussion offline where I sort of said that I made some good money backing Scott Morrison as well last election, and
good.
And that was courtesy of my father, who was a political man. He was an ALP man, but he always said that oppositions don't win elections, governments lose them. And so as soon as I saw Bill Shorten doing what he did, I said, well, that's crazy. He's picking wars with everyone. He can't win. But they've learnt their lesson. So they're basically not saying anything this time, which is exactly what Shorten should have done. He should have gone overseas for 3 months. But anyway, I think Morrison's in trouble. You know, to me, I'm really praying that the Senate, the balance of power is held by the freedom-friendly parties that we're talking about. Which gets me on to, I guess, another issue, which I've heard you talk about Canada before. They used to be a big, strong two-party system, and now obviously they've developed into something more. And, you know, because they don't have preferential voting, you've got Justin Trudeau as the guy calling the shots, even though a third of the people only voted for him. Do you think that, you know, potentially that's what we're looking at in Australia here, a big change away from the two-party preferred system?
There are no 2 countries on earth more similar than Australia and Canada. We've got similar population, we're very big countries. We're very hot, they're very cold. We've got similar histories. We've got basically an identical constitution. We've got a constitutional monarchy. We've got a upper house, lower house. We've got state parliaments, what they call provincial parliaments. Okay, so we are Canada's twin. Now, what happened? And so therefore, what happens in Canada is very, very interesting for us. And what happened was they had their 2 parties. So their historic party of the left, which Justin Trudeau belongs to, is called the Liberal Party. Confusing with us, but anyway, that's their left of centre party. And then they had this party that had been around since the 1860s, which is when Canada first got their independence from Britain, very similar to Australia in 1901. And that was called the Progressive Conservative Party. Weird name, but that was their name. They were called the PCs, Progressive Conservative. And then what happened was, they get to the early 1990s, and this little libertarian, sort of socially conservative party broke away from the progressive conservatives in Western Canada. And they had a message pretty similar to us, although the Liberal Democrats are not really social conservatives, but certainly fiscal conservatives, and we've sort of got an open mind on everything else now. But anyway, we've got quite a lot in common with this little party, which was called the Reform Party. And they were pro-business, deregulation, just like Margaret Thatcher type of thing. And they went really well. And 3 federal elections later, the Liberals were in power in the 1990s, but the little Reform Party overtook the Progressive Conservatives in terms of having more seats in what they call the House of Commons, which is our House of Representatives. So they had this great old party, the Progressive Conservatives, around since the 19th century, got taken over in 3 federal elections by a little breakaway party who broke away because they just thought, just like the Liberal Party today in Australia, had just been taken over by careerists and apparatchiks and people like Scott Morrison, who don't believe in a bloody thing and who had very little experience in the real world. And so then then after they overtook them, those 2 parties officially merged. But the truth is, it was a mop-up operation. The Reform Party basically just sort of was just taking over, just to be polite. Basically, they didn't even need to. They had destroyed them. They became rebadged as the Conservative Party, and Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister for 12 years, and a pretty good Prime Minister, very good Prime Minister. Okay. So look, these things, we hopefully are not wasting our time in the Liberal Democrats, and I believe we're not, because there's so many hardcore Liberal Party people out there, National Party people, who are so horrified with what their party has done.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the big issue is, and you mentioned it, the career politicians, the guys that are just, they haven't any experience in the real world. And I can't remember a time ever seeing politicians that are so detached from the people that they represent as we are seeing at the moment. It's just insane. But if you go and look at the resume of these guys, it's pretty apparent that none of them have lived in the real world.
Basically none of them. There's really, really few exceptions these days. Now, this is the trajectory on how to become a Liberal Party politician, but it's worse in the Labor Party and the Nationals. The National Party, which used to be a more conservative, pro-free enterprise party than the Liberal Party. 20 years ago, the left wing of the New South Wales Liberal Party had this concerted effort to take over the National Party, and that's exactly what has happened. John Anderson used to be the Deputy Prime Minister of this country with John Howard. John Anderson is an impressive human being.
He is.
He's got plenty of money. He's already been the Deputy Prime Minister and a very successful one. There was nothing in it for him to go back into Parliament, except that he's a patriot and that he sees what's happening and he's really concerned about it. And and the National Party should have rolled out the red carpet. John Anderson, thanks for coming back. We need your wisdom in the National Parliament. And he got defeated in a pre-selection by this little dweeb, Ross Cadell, who used to be the president of the New South Wales Young Liberals, not Young Nationals, Young Liberals. And he's just a professional staffer / lobbyist / wanker his whole life. And the National Party chose him over John Anderson. Okay. Yeah, nice. And Scott Morrison was happy about it. Scott Morrison didn't want John Anderson there. Why? Because John Anderson was there.
He was going to take his job.
Well, he was thinking, I don't want a true believer. True believers are a pain in the neck. I'm running a little drama show here, a little pretending. But look, this is the trajectory of how someone gets into Parliament, like Ross Cadell.
Yeah.
They usually go fairly bright at school. So
yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a concern for a lot of people out there. I know it is. But hopefully what we've done today is sort of said to people, we've given them some tools to actually go and say, well, go and have your say at the ballot box, because that's where it's done. And one thing I do know is that if people vote a certain way, these politicians will get the message. That's the only thing they understand is votes. The fact that they're going to be unemployed, that's the only thing that will get their attention. Yes. So it's up to us, and we've got to take the time, we've got to take the effort to actually put a bit of thought into this and go and do what we need to do for the sake of our children and their children. It's not going to worry us. We're going to be old and sort of all washed up, but I want my kids and I want their kids to have the opportunities that I had when I was a younger fella.
Absolutely. Look, for further information on the preferential voting system, Topher Field, who's a very good commentator, has made a video. So I think on preferential voting. So I think you're going to be distributing.
Yes, I'll include that. That was a great little take. Well, John, mate, thank you for the time. Thank you for your insights.
Thanks, Rob. Good to catch up
look,
again.
I wish you all luck in the race, and mate, it's great to see you standing up and having a go. You know, at the end of the day, it's all easy to sit at the sideline and, you know, give our 2 bobs worth, but to actually put your hand up and get amongst it, hats off to you.
Good on you, Rob. Well, look, thank you very much for your interest, which, you know, clearly you feel keenly about these subjects. And I'm so pleased that we've had an opportunity to speak, and you know, hopefully a few people can watch this and learn a thing or two.
Thanks very much, John.